Hey fellow designers, it's Karen of Made by Karen M. Today we're going to be taking a behind the scenes look at the creation of this beaded lace corset style prom dress that I made for 2023. Believe it or not, this dress really gave me a run for my money. It was super difficult and I ran into a lot of obstacles while I was completing it. I wanted to show you guys so you can have a true idea of all the things that can go wrong during prom season and ways to handle it. If you'd like to see more, stay tuned. But before you do, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and change your notification bell from personalized to all so you get notified every time I post one of these videos. Let's get started. There's one dress that had the inspiration photo had a very specific fabric. I couldn't find it in stock anywhere. So that's been stressing me out because every day I just spend a few minutes looking for something similar and I don't find anything. So I'm gonna have to pick something else and tell my client, look, we're gonna have to go with this or that. We can't get fabric A because it just doesn't exist anymore. And then go from there. Okay, so this is the inspiration photo that my client provided me with. And when I saw it, I knew exactly which fabric I was going to use for it. Most of the time when I see inspiration photos, there's elements I can pick out color, style of beading, etc. And I can go find several things that would work for the design. But sometimes, like in this situation, I knew that there was going to be one specific fabric that was going to give the client the vision that she wanted. Because I remembered seeing it on Etsy. This was the fabric, and I was really excited about the cost being so affordable because these were return clients and I had given them a very low price for a custom prom dress. I had made a dress for one of their other children previously, which was closer to the beginning of my sewing journey. And so that dress was super cheap. And here I am years later, they're returning to me, and let's be transparent. Sometimes it's hard stating your price unapologetically, especially with people that you know. And so whereas I would have charged anyone else much more, I kind of just gave them a discount without them even asking, which proved to be a very horrible idea, but stay tuned and you guys will see why. When I went to order the fabric, it was out of stock. It looked like it wasn't, but the vendor messaged me and told me it was discontinued. So that meant I was going to have to pick a different fabric, but the problem was, what other fabric am I going to find? I couldn't think of anything else that looked anything like it. And then about a month after the consultation, I came across this gorgeous fabric at High Fashion Fabrics in Houston. The only problem was it was super expensive. For an $800 dress, I was basically going to be spending $350 on just the beaded lace, plus the lining, plus the notions, and basically doing the dress for free. Now, any normal sane person would have gone back to their client and said, hey, things have changed. I'm not going to be able to provide the dress for this price. Your material is going to be more expensive, so it's going to be X amount of more dollars. But me being the crazy, over-dedicated designer that I am, I said,
got to see it through, my boy. God damn it.
And y'all, I'm sharing this because I want y'all to learn from my mistakes, because it was literally one of the dumbest things that I could have done that season. Do not foot the bill for extra expensive fabric that you did not budget for when you quoted a dress. So moving on to the next issue, I was in love with the fabric. I thought it was perfect. It literally was probably the best option that I could have picked for that design. But once I put the lining underneath the beaded lace, I saw that it looked ashy. So I decided I was going to try wig tint spray. And y'all, the level of delulu I was in this video is just ridiculous. It's almost sad how excited I look in this video thinking that I found the perfect solution. And technically, I don't think it was a bad solution because it is ultimately what I ended up using for the dress. But when I put the dress together after using the wig tint spray to spray the back of all the fabric, I did not get the results that I wanted. And I did my due diligence. I did test swatches where I sprayed swatches of the material with the wig tint spray, and I washed it in the sink to make sure that it wasn't going to come off, and it didn't. But like I said, I got different results on the actual dress. So here I am spraying the lace tint spray on the back of the fabric. I cut all my pieces out first, and once I put the dress together and looked at it, I felt like it looked blotchy. So it could have been human error, like it could have been me just not spraying it evenly. But I also feel like the lace tint color was rubbing off on the lining material. And I used kind of like a stretch knit fabric. So I don't know if that fabric is just absorbent and that's what caused the beaded lace to be blotchy. But once I put it together, I didn't like how it looked. This is all, by the way, me doing stuff before even telling my client, hey, I think your fabric is too white looking and I want to do something to it to make it more nude. This is all me just putting in the extra effort because I want the dress to be perfect. So I'm getting ready to wash this. I noticed that all the dye work that I had done on the skirt was starting to fade. So when I put my corset top up to the skirt, I noticed that it was not the same shade of brown. And so I just did a test run where I washed some pieces that had brown on it. The brown came all the way out, and I am going to just go ahead and wash this because I don't want it to be patchy, and it was looking patchy. It was starting to fade in some areas and be really brown in others, and that's not gonna work. So in the washer you go. And y'all, I really regretted doing that because look how ashy this dress looked after I washed it and returned it to its original color. Like, you could barely even tell the fabric underneath was like a chocolatey brown color. It was so ashy. But I said I was going to leave it like that and allow my client to come in for her fitting and see if she had an issue with it. Because, mind you, I've never spoken to her about trying to make the fabric look more skin toned. I just decided to see what she would think about it. And I kid you not, the first thing she said when she walked in was that the dress was like too light-skinned looking and that she wanted it to be more brown. So I immediately said, okay, I'll dye it. I told them that I had tried this spray tint and that it didn't quite work how I wanted it to, but I said that I would attempt to dye it with some fabric dye. And let me tell you, the next steps of me trying to dye this fabric was the worst nightmare. But before I get into that, I'm going to show you some other details of the production of the dress. You already know I use my built-in bra corset course method for this portion of the dress. I've been doing this method for 7 years where I build a store-bought bra into the dress to make a corset base. And after 7 years, I finally perfected it to the point that I could turn it into a pattern and teach other people how to do it. So if you're interested in learning this method, be sure to check out my course. It is on Etsy. I had never dyed fabric before, so the first thing I did was go to Ross to look for a pot specifically to dye my fabric. So I followed the directions on the containers of dye, which said you needed to use so much water. And that's why I had that bowl, because I was going to transfer my boiling water from the stove into this container that was on the floor. But I dyed some fabrics for Prom 2024, and I did not use nearly that much water. My frustration with this came in with, and side note, I did not know these were two different types of dyes. The dye more is for synthetic materials, and the all-purpose dye is for non-synthetic. I don't know. Anyways, they're two different types of dyes. And this past year, I used the synthetic for everything that I dyed. I dyed this fabric in multiple ways. I tried the dye more synthetic. I tried the all-purpose. I tried tea. I tried coffee. Now, looking back, I don't know if it wasn't working because I didn't need so much water. Although I was following the directions and I made sure the temperature was correct. For some reason, it wouldn't work. And I spent at least 24 hours total, like I clocked it, trying to dye this fabric because I didn't want to disappoint my client. At the end, it ended up being a waste of time. So my literal last resort was to go back to the lace tint spray, and I needed like 6 cans, spent like $60 on it. on top of the money that I already overspent on fabric. The other thing that really gave me trouble on this project was the fact that I picked a beaded mesh material. It was the most heavily beaded fabric that I had worked with. And I learned the hard way that you have to remove the beads from the seam allowance, or else it will really slow you down, break a lot of needles, and make your work not so neat. Aside from all the extra headache and labor of having to find a different fabric, having to spend so much extra money on fabric, having to tint the fabric, change my mind, wash the fabric, try to dye the fabric, have that completely fail with 4 different methods, and then retinting the fabric. I also had to remake part of the dress because my client had a change in measurements from consultation to finishing. And she also wanted me to remove the sleeves from the dress. I had them attached. She wanted them completely removed. And then once I did that, it changed the measurements of the sleeves I should say it changed the fit of the sleeves, and I had to add elastic. And then I finally finished the dress, hand delivered it, dropped it off, and she was really happy with it. But I got this text message saying that the dress was too long in the front. And despite the fact that I had delivered it, that was something that I didn't notice, and also the client didn't notice. So it was kind of on both of us. And since I had this happen, I have learned to measure the client's length from hip to floor and add 5 inches, no more than 5 inches. That'll give just enough room at the bottom with them having heels on, plus you hemming the bottom of the dress so that they won't have too long of a train and be tripping over the front of the dress if they wanted floor length. But mind you, it's the thick of prom season, so I finished that and I was trying to move on and work on the next thing. I hadn't eaten for the whole entire day. I literally didn't order anything from Uber Eats until 10 p.m. And at the same time, I got this text that my client was about to pull back up to my house so that I could rehem her dress. It was stressful, to say the least. But after 100 hours of labor and pretty much no profit, I have to say I was extremely pleased with the outcome of the dress. I learned a lot from this process about dressmaking and about myself as a designer, and definitely learned some lessons that I've taken into the rest of my dressmaking journey. If you guys learned anything from this video, be sure to leave it in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.